Republican presidential candidates have targeted Donald Trump, who didn't show up to the second televised debate of the campaign. The former president leads all major polls with an average 40-point lead over his closest rivals.
In California's Ronald Reagan Library, 7 of the 8 leading candidates vying to be on the Republican ticket for 2024 stated their case. This was the second debate for this presidential campaign, and the second one Donald Trump decided to skip.
Where's Joe Biden? He's completely missing in action from leadership. And you know who else is missing in action? Donald Trump is missing in action. He should be on this stage tonight.
It devolved into back and forth bickering more than once.
Everybody knows that. Let's focus on holding Joe Biden accountable. That's what we need to be focusing on.
But for the most part, it lacked any major blows. The candidates rounded on biotech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy more than once.
I'm glad Vivek pulled out of his business deal in 2018 in China. That must have been about the time you decided to start voting in presidential elections.
Every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say.
The debate on border security and the economy pushed on. Donald Trump managed to dominate without being there.
I'll tell you this, Donald Trump failed on this as well. He said he was going to build a wall across the whole border. He built 52 miles of wall and said Mexico would pay for it. Guess what? I think if Mexico knew that he was only going to build 52 miles, they might have paid for the 52 miles.
The former president organised a rival event in Michigan at the same time, speaking to auto workers. Just one day after Joe Biden joined striking auto workers in Michigan himself.
A vote for President Trump means the future of the automobile will be made in America, where it should be. Made in America.
No single candidate was the obvious winner in this debate. The reality is, with Donald Trump polling so far ahead, these candidates are all fighting to be considered the alternative candidate if something upends the race for Donald Trump in the next year.
You know, you can say, oh, there's some poll months before. No, you got to make the case. You got to owe to the voters.
The next debate takes place on November 8 in Miami, with tougher requirements for candidates to qualify for the stage, making it more likely candidates will start dropping out as the race heats up. Annelise, Nielsen, Sky News, Washington, D.C.
And Annelise Nielsen joins us live now. Annelise, hard to know where to start with this debate, but yeah, Donald Trump wasn't there. There were a few choice lines. They seem like they might have been planned. I'm thinking of the Chris Christie and trying to get the Donald Duck moniker up of Donald Trump. Nikki Haley had a few good lines as well, saying to Vivek that every time he speaks, she feels a little dumber. Is any of this going to work?
Well, look, I've been listening back to my wrap of it last night. That is all true. The emphasis right now is with Donald Trump. He has all the leads in the polls, but that doesn't mean it's a fait accompli. We are still a year out, and there is plenty that can happen in that time. Look at 2007. Barack Obama trailed behind Hillary Clinton for a very long time. And the other thing to consider here is in a lot of the polling where people are asked, if you had to vote tomorrow, who would you vote for? Plenty say Donald Trump. And that's because in the people who vote in Republican primaries, which is a very small fraction of the actual broader population that votes in elections, there is still a lot of support for him. And they want to put that message out there, especially as he's being pursued in these legal arenas in these 4 different indictments, that they do support him. But notice, when they're given multiple options, they still like other candidates in the race. It's not do or die. It's not Trump or no one. And so if any of them can cut through, there is still an opportunity for someone else to pull ahead. And quite honestly, I think we do need to be keeping an eye on Nikki Haley. I think she got a bump in the polls after the first debate. She very much held her own again last night. And she's been very good at reframing the debate away from those talking points that we've heard. Last night when she was asked about the economy, she said, okay, we need to look at why. And when she was asked about specifically, there was a lot of discussion around the border, saying, well, what are the economic factors that are impacting so much of this? Why is this happening as well? And she's very hardline on the border, don't get me wrong, but I think it's just a very good way of reframing the debate. She's done that very effectively with abortion as well, and that was a huge vote loser for the Republicans in the midterms.
Yeah, absolutely, it was. She's kind of, I think, shown a pathway how Republicans might be able to handle that issue going forward into a presidential election. I mean, I don't think Chris Christie is a serious candidate there, but he is serious in terms of shaking things up and being kind of the chief criticiser of Donald Trump, and perhaps that clears the pathway for another. Ron DeSantis, still a big question mark over him. He was once talked about as the hope of the side, the one man that could knock off Donald Trump for the Republican nominee, but he's had a few awkward moments and he's not quite back there, is he? He still looks a little bit nervous or unsure. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I think he did a lot better last night than in the first debate. He seemed a little more comfortable. Debating hasn't been his strong point when you look back at some of his performances in Florida. Of course, it didn't hurt him at all. He's still a very popular governor there. And by all the national polls for this, he is still the main alternate for voters after Donald Trump. But he does seem to have this issue with just kind of connecting with ordinary people, but also just that narrative's really taken control, which is really difficult in a campaign once that's taken control to get away from it. And one of the things I find interesting with him is he's just incredibly intelligent. He went to Yale, he's a lawyer, he's very experienced, and he's extremely sharp. And so often when you hear people talking about him, they don't have that sense. He's the culture wars warrior. And I think what might have happened with this is he kind of was so keen to brand himself as that, as a way to connect with people, but it's not really his natural intellect. I think if he actually kind of leaned more into his own intelligence, his own intellect, that he could connect with people really well, because people will meet you at that level.
Annelise, fascinating. Love to talk to you about this. We could do a whole show on it, but we can't. We'll see you soon.